Hi, welcome to SPR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We are previewing the main card of UFC 186. Right now we are talking with returning guest Nick Kalikas from MMAOddsBreaker.com. Our regular viewers know that Nick Kalikas is a professional odds maker for MMA fights, and also joining us over the phone, from MMAOddsBreaker.com, is MMA analyst Brad Tazchuk. All right. CB, Dollaway, and Michael Bisping. Kind of an ugly fight to put on the main card, but it's here. We're going to tackle it. Bisping minus 150, Dollaway plus 130 on the other side. The total is over 2.5, heavily juiced to the over at minus 235 at 5 dimes. You know, both these guys coming off of devastating losses, both these guys just basically fighting for pride and longevity, right? Neither one of these guys is going to get a title shot. I think we can confidently say that. So where's the value here? I actually think just because it's an ugly fight doesn't necessarily mean it couldn't have a good betting line. And I'm thinking that Bisping is the kind of guy who can't hang with the elite fighters, but when he's facing guys a notch below that, he looks good and is actually maybe a reliable guy to bet on. And at just minus 150, you're not paying a lot of juice on that. Brad Tazchuk, what do you think? Michael Bisping at minus 150, maybe that's a good bet. What do you think?
I think it is a good bet. I look at this fight the same way that you just did. I think Bisping struggles against the guys that are at the upper echelon, the guys that can really have a big physical advantage over him, because technically, you know, he's pretty sound. There's not a lot of guys that have a huge technical advantage over Michael Bisping. So I think this is a pretty interesting fight for him. I don't think that CB Dollaway is going to be able to take him down at will and win a decision that way. Right. I think that Bisping is going to be able to keep it on the feet. He's always the busier striker when he's on the feet. And we've seen in the past that CB Dollaway is not great defensively, and he doesn't have a great chin. So even though that over 2.5 is heavily juiced, as you said, Michael Bisping has always been an underrated finisher. When guys start to get tired, which is something that happens to CB Dollaway, and they get hurt, he's really good at swarming on them. Even if he doesn't knock them out, he puts them in a position where the ref has to come in and stop the fight. So I wouldn't be shocked if Bisping wins, but I really wouldn't be shocked if he gets the finish as well.
Under 2.5 right now, 5 dimes is plus 195. I like the analysis. Brad Tazchuk also agreeing with me on Bisping. Nick Kalikas, I think me and Brad are both basically seeing it the same way. Has the public been betting on Bisping, or have they actually been biting on the dog?
Two-way action coming in at this point. Lines kind of margins have tightened up a little bit, but there's been more action on Dolloway coming in early on. So really? I think that'll change by fight day. Obviously, we'll get more action back on Bisping. But yeah, early on, people have been coming in on Dolloway.
Why do you think that is? I wouldn't think that I don't see any real reason. I mean, he doesn't have a bigger name.
Well, styles make fights, to be honest with you. And this is an intriguing fight. And look at the line. I mean, it is holding steady low, regardless of where the public's bet. It's under 2-1. So I think under 2-1 lines there's all sorts of possibilities all the time when you see a fight like that. So it's basically your wrestler, grappler versus your striker in Bisping. Now, right. Bisping has had success in the past by fending off pretty good, solid wrestlers and keeping the fight upright and doing this thing on the feet. I mean, his takedown defense has been really solid overall, so you got to give him a lot of credit. He's improved his wrestling drastically, and that's key here because he's going to need to keep the fight upright. I mean, if Dolloway gets his fight to the floor, Dolloway's a very underrated wrestler. He's a very underrated grappler, so he's got some sneaky good submissions. Now, defensively, Dolloway has some problems with his submission defense at times, but offensively, the guy is definitely skilled on the ground, and he could, I think, dominate Bisping if he does hit the floor here. So make no mistake, Dolloway's going to attempt to get this fight to the floor, and I think if you look back, I mean, really, Bisping has still struggled against Kennedy. Kennedy was able to get the fight to the floor and control him, and a lot of people were surprised by that as well. So I don't think Dolloway, his wrestling has been pretty much dominant over most people he's faced when he hasn't been knocked out early in those fights too. So I think that it's a possibility that Dolloway does get this fight to the floor, and if he does, Bisping could be in some trouble. He could grind out Bisping for a decision win or even possibly submit him. So I think that's why you're seeing some dog action early on coming in that way because of his grappling. And Bisping still, even though his wrestling, I said it's solid, his takedown defense has improved quite a bit. Dolloway's kind of a wild card here because we don't really know how good his grappling and wrestling can be when matched up with Bisping until they get in there. I mean, we're all really speculating right now that Bisping should be able to stuff the takedowns and keep it upright. But you know what? A lot of people were surprised when he out-wrestled Carmont. I know Carmont, he has a pretty good grinder, grappler in his own right, but how Dolloway was able to control a strong fighter like that. Carmont, of course, declined and out of the UFC at this moment. But that being said, I mean, Dolloway has that kind of unorthodox style, and he's effective at times on the ground.
So where'd you open this line then? And do you think that the line, if you had to make a bet here, you would go with Dollaway?
Yeah, honestly, I wouldn't lay Bisping. There's question marks. Even though Bisping has a significant edge on the feet, I still think that his chin is a little bit suspect. I mean, he was able to absorb some punishment, some shots recently in his fights, and it did not get KO'd, so you got to give him credit for that. But he does get rocked in almost every fight. So even though Bisping has the advantages on the feet, Dollaway has enough power, he could do some damage on the feet. But you could say the same thing. Obviously, out of the two chins, I think Bisping's chin's better. So Dollaway, I agree again with Brad. There's a possibility that Bisping does finish this fight if he catches Dollaway, no doubt about that. I opened the line minus 185 for Bisping, plus 145 on Dollaway, and it has been bet down a little bit, like I said, overall. So I do think that there still might be a little bit of value on the dog instead of betting the favorite here in this spot because, again, if you let it play out in the feet, Bisping should win more times than not, but that questionable chin comes into play. I have a hard problem laying that kind of juice against anybody with a questionable chin.
Sure, well, then why'd you open it at 185?
Because I honestly thought the public would bet it up even more. I thought that Bisping is the more popular fighter. There hasn't been too much respect on Dollaway, no doubt about it. I mean, he was bet up almost in every fight. It seems like people were betting against Dollaway, right? So I figured that the line would climb up. I was surprised to see some early action coming on the underdog and the line staying steady. That's why I'm assuming that the line will climb back up a little bit more and maybe even reach 2-1 or over by fight day. But I do think there's going to be some sharp action coming in on Dollaway eventually, and the line will drop back down.
All right. Sounds like there's going to be a lot of movement on these lines. That's interesting. And I'm thinking that maybe the under 2.5 at plus 195 might really be the way to go because usually when you see a line like that, the over at 2.5 at minus 235, it's going the distance unless something fluky happens, and that's why it's not a lock. But here it seems like, it's not going to take a fluke to end early. Under 2.5 plus 195. What do you think about that, Brad Taschuk? Is that maybe the best bet on the entire main card?
I don't know about the best bet on the main card. There's a couple other ones that I like as well, but I would think that the under 2.5 has a really good shot. Plus 195, that means that it hits just over a third of a time.
Yeah.
I think it happens more often than that. As Nick said, Dolloway has some good finishing skills. He's shown some power lately. Neither guy has the greatest chin in the world, so I can definitely see a finish coming here. But I think it's more of a case where it's probably Bisping that's going to get that finish if it happens, just due to Dolloway's chin and his cardio.
Considering all those factors, why then is the over so juiced? Oh, minus 235 right now at 5 dimes. Why do you think that is, Brad?
Because people always think that Michael Bisping is a pity-pat striker, and while he doesn't have a lot of one-punch knockout power, like I said earlier, he's always been underrated as a finisher. Once he gets guys hurt, or even if he sees guys are tired, he didn't go out there and just knock out Kung Lee in his last win, I should say. He broke him down with strikes and eventually got the stoppage because Lee just couldn't do anything back to him. So that's more how he finishes guys. He breaks them down. He doesn't knock them out. So people see that. They see that he doesn't have that power, and they say, oh, it's a Bisping fight. It's going to go to decision.
I like the analysis, guys. Thanks.